Hey everybody, it's Christian Spletzer here. We are on stage 4, research, the 8 stages of a successful retained search. Today we're going to talk about taking a systematic approach to research, figuring out how to set a process with timelines and expectations, and how to document your findings so that you can hand this off to the outreach team and ensure a speedy recruiting process. So, as we've discussed in the past, these are the 8 stages of search, this one being the research stage. This is really about executing on the research strategy and building research in a systematic way. So the key to an effective and efficient research plan is pretty simple. You've already done the hard part. You've worked to set a good strategy with your client. Where you're going to look, who you're looking for, what does that person look like, what companies you're going to look into. At this point, you should be able to take that strategy, pass it off to your researchers, who should be able to sort of work on the strategy in a paint-by-numbers way. This research strategy is really about getting ahead of common problems in this stage of search. Too often, partners will sort of move through this strategy stage a little too quickly, not document their findings, or not communicate to their team exactly what it is they're looking for. And if you don't define success, if you don't come up with an objective criteria of what good looks like, your research team doesn't really know. They're not in the room when you're talking to a client, and they're not privy to the nuance of the discussions that you have. So you really got to take time. Again, we've made the case for it in the last video about getting all that information not only out of your client but documented into your project management solution. But if you were able to take a systematic approach, you're able to manage the research stage pretty easily. You've got a black and white way of measuring whether your research team is doing what they're supposed to. You've got timelines that you can set. Are you going to hit the timeline or not? You set expectations. You've got the definition of what good looks like on this project. You are looking for a certain quantity depending upon this project. Each one has its own unique number, but typically 100, 200 quality research candidates. And you want your research team to do certain documentation. Why are they putting a person on a project? How does that person match the objective criteria for research so that you can move forward quickly? And you want to make sure that you are taking advantage of the work you've already done, leveraging that work, and moving the process along that much faster. So the objective criteria I've already referred to is around things that are easily identifiable on a candidate profile or someone's profile, say on LinkedIn or other third-party source. Where does this person live or work? What's their company experience? What function or department are they in, and what seniority do they have? So when you think about doing a VP of marketing, you can rule out salespeople for the most part. And so if you're looking for somebody that needs to be in Ohio, you're not really going to be recruiting somebody from Washington unless that's part of the discussion with your client. So by really taking the time and being pedantic with your team, saying this is what we're looking for, you're going to be able to move through that process quickly. And then your team researches with a purpose. Right? They know what they're responsible for. They know what the expectations are. They're not sitting there trying to guess or second guessing themselves of whether their criteria for good meets your criteria for good. You know what you expect. You've communicated that. They know what you expect. So your team is really responsible for finding those people. What they're not responsible for is screening for those soft skills. Are they looking for a job? What's their personality like? What's their presence? Things that falls on your recruiter. They may be the same person, but the research stage is different from the outreach stage. The research is sort of you're sitting in the library. The outreach stage is you're out in front of people at a cocktail party trying to get that information. And so don't forget that those are two distinct phases in the recruiting process. So getting your research team to stick to the search strategy, focusing on the approved metrics that you've agreed upon, and getting that right quantity is going to move you through the research stage, which should move quickly, oftentimes does not. And oftentimes it is more trial and error than a systematic scientific approach to research. And it doesn't have to be. If you do this step by step and focus on the process, knowing what's coming next will help you stay focused on setting that strategy correctly from the first interaction with your client, that kickoff meeting, so that you know you're setting up your research and outreach team for success. This allows you to entrust your team to do their job. You don't have to manage too heavily if you are giving them the information they need to do their job correctly. But again, clear communications, giving them a sense of purpose and accomplishment when they meet your expectations or hopefully exceeds them, and that frees you up to manage candidates, clients, and business development and the business of search while they're building out that research phase. So one of the things too that you want to make sure that you do, and don't forget, when your research team is finding people, whether it's in your database or on some other site, have them document what they're doing. Make sure that you know when they are adding information, that you can go and see what they are doing. That it's not just sitting, residing with them in a little bit of a black box. Have them document their findings to show why a person makes the cut. How do they meet up against the search strategy? Not only does this help you check their quality of their work, but it gives your outreach team a good, quick way to reach out to somebody on a project and say, and sort of circumvent doing the research themselves. If they've got someone who's on a project who meets the search criteria working at one company and is in the right location, and let the researcher bullet point their rationale for putting that person on the project as they're doing it, because it's top of mind for them. It frees you and your recruiter from the trouble of trying to figure it out. Why did they put them on there? The researcher's in the best position to make that note in a very quick little bullet point way. So when you're thinking about research, you always got to find it. So where should you start? Do you have that research in your database? If you've been using a database and using it well, that information should be there. You should, most firms tend to specialize. You should have relevant people that you know or the firm knows for this particular project. Can you get to them? Can you leverage that work? How are they relevant? And will they pick up the phone when you call them? When you're out of your research from your database, then you want to go out to other sources like LinkedIn and Hoovers and CapIQ, but figuring out that at the get-go and letting your team know where you expect them to find people, whether internally or externally, and where externally, it would be a good place to focus. That's something you should set when you're kicking off research. But don't forget, using your own database, it should be, if you're doing everything you're supposed to as you're going through your projects, it should be easily accessible, and the people that you've worked with in the past should be more likely to respond. And these, even if they're not looking for a job, if you have maintained a professional relationship with them, turn them off if they were on a candidate, and you've been, maintain a good relationship in terms of turning them off on a project, they should respond to your outreach, and maybe they can help be a source for other candidates you might want to talk to. If they're relevant, then they're going to meet on. If you've got a relevant project for the one you've got going on, then maybe they'll just make the cut right off the way for your research team to add them, and it's going to save you time as you are moving through this phase. Again, start thinking about research as a piece of the puzzle. It does not have to continue throughout the life of the project. If you do your strategy correctly, you can move through this phase really quickly, getting quicker results, cutting off days, maybe weeks off of your days to placement of this project. But that all starts with a strategy and good research execution. All right. Thanks, and stay tuned for our next webinar on outreach for your recruiters. Happy hunting.